Welcome to Best 1031 Online, where you will get expert insights into all aspects of tax-deferred 1031 exchange from some of the nation's most well-known commercial real estate professionals, as well as CPAs, accommodators, wealth managers, and others. Here's your host, 1031 Broker James.
Let me tell you something. If you're a practicing commercial real estate broker trying to keep up in today's market, you cannot do it all yourself. I couldn't do what I do without my virtual assistant from CRE Task Wizard. Their VAs are trained specifically for commercial real estate administrative work, which frees me up to focus on revenue-producing activities. If you want your time back and your sanity back, go to CRETaskWizard.com. Tell them 1031 Broker James sent you, and they'll waive your onboarding fee. CRE Task Wizard. Buy your time back. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Best 1031 Online. I am 1031 Broker James, and this is the second episode of The Brokers Who Get It. And with me today is Rae Nomura with Embree SVN up in the Pacific Northwest. And she is an investment broker and also does 1031 exchanges. That's who I talk with, or brokers who get it, brokers who get the 1031 exchange. So, Rae, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about your practice and how you got to be where you're at now.
Sure. I come from the world of appraisal. I was a commercial real estate appraiser for almost 10 years. Worked in retail, multifamily, mixed use throughout the states of Oregon and Washington. Got bored, burnt out, jumped over to brokerage 4.5 years ago. Love it. Really love being able to help my clients understand different property types, different options, walk them through and help them pick out what's the best fit for them. I like playing matchmaker with the buyer and their property. And so because of that, 1031 exchanges are crucial and a lot of what the business that I do. I love being able to take somebody that is maybe stuck. Often I'll find somebody that has had an apartment complex. They started with a fourplex, 8 to 16 units. They're now in their late 60s, early 70s. They're overwhelmed. It's a little mismanaged. They've got a great asset, but they want to simplify their life. And so I will help them figure out how to get rid of their apartment complex and exchange into some sort of triple net retail that is better suited for their next 10 to 15 years of investment and just lifestyle, less to manage, more accountability with the income that they're going to be generating, an easier roadmap. And so walking them through, does that look like a single tenant net lease deal, a Dollar General, if you will, with 15 years new lease term? Or are we looking at a 3-tenant retail strip center? Or maybe you still want to get in and play around with the investment a little bit. And so we want something that's got a little bit of value add, or maybe needs some tenant restructuring over the next few years. You've got 5 more years where you want to get in there and make that asset really shine. Walking through that level of interest and kind of options and appetite for risk is what makes me very excited to help clients and get them into the perfect property.
Nice. Yeah. So you and I met last year at the CREI Summit, the one that was in the Palm Desert at the JW Marriott. And, we met, got acquainted, and I remember you sharing with me about the practice that you just described, and that you do, are a broker that gets it. And there's just so many brokers. I don't know if you realize this or not, that, more than 60% of exchanges fail every year. And it's not because the 1031 is complicated, and it's not because investors want to exchange. It's because most real estate agents have been trained properly in the 1031 exchange. So it's really an education problem. And that's filtered down, if you will, to the investors. So many of these investors, you work with many of the same people I do, that 65 or older have owned their assets for a couple of decades, and they want to exchange, but they are confused by misinformation. Have you had anybody where they own a triplex and they really want to sell it, but they're convinced that the only way they can exchange is to exchange into another triplex?
Yes. Or any sort of multifamily, right? And they're like, but I don't want multifamily anymore. I'm like, you don't have to.
Yeah, so they're convinced because of the like kind wording, right?
The like kind
that they
wording.
have to exchange in the exact same type of property.
Yeah.
So the story.
There's some flexibility in exchanges.
Yeah, it's like kind, meaning investment for investment. So you can own a single family home that you rent out and exchange into a net lease deal, or you can sell a multifamily and exchange into a retail strip center if you want. Is this as long as it's held for investment? So do you remember your first 1031?
Yeah, I think my first 1031 was somebody who owned a residence actually in Northern California, and it appreciated very well. So it was a house that they bought. They moved up to the Portland area. A decade later, their $800,000 investment's worth over $2 million. They're like, I got to exchange. I don't want to buy another $2 million single family residence. What do? I need something that makes money. And so we went and we bought a mixed use, which had, I think, 19 tenants. It was a little bit of a headache. It had one apartment. It had maybe 9 small offices, and then it had some ground floor retail. And it was actually
a lot more management involved with that than a single family home rental.
Yes, but they were excited. They were, I think, in their 40s and excited to get in there and play around and build some equity, little bit of sweat equity with managing the management to get things done. And just sick of having something in California that they were paying a lot of taxes on for no real reason.
Right. So with that, before you did that transaction, what was your experience with 1031? How did you even know to point them in that direction?
So I grew up in real estate. My mom was a residential appraiser. And so I've heard a variety of different real estate terms throughout my childhood. I said I would never, ever be an appraiser, which is, I'm sure, why I ended up as a commercial appraiser for a decade. And then just understanding the finances behind that in the appraisal world, right? The majority of, I would say, what really drives a lot of commercial purchases is the 1031 exchange. And particularly on the appraisal front, because you have to replace debt with equivalent debt. And so then you're getting an appraisal, and we would look and see what was happening, read purchase and sale agreement, and understand how driven they were, what the motivations were to get the deal done.
Right. So we mentioned about the, people being confused about like kind. What else has been your experience since you are consistently in that 1031 conversation? I'm curious to know, what's been your experience of other, myths that have come to the forefront, or commonalities, or even ones that you've heard of failing?
Timing. Timing is key. And there's this idea, I think, a lot of people, that they can't do anything until they've sold property, sold their down leg. And you can start looking right away, especially if you think that you want to jump to a different property type. If you've only ever been in multifamily and you're kind of contemplating retail or a mixed use property, my suggestion is to start planning and looking at those as soon as you possibly can, and getting familiar with the market and market expectations and understanding what you might actually be trading into, so that when your property does sell, you're ready to hit the ground running, and you're not then starting to try to understand what the cap rate is and what the issues are. And I always tell people we can write and see what happens, right? If it's a property that's been mismarketed, that might be why it's sitting, and so there could be good opportunity. I would love to see us be almost all the way through due diligence before we even get to that 45-day ID period, because I want to know you are buying that, right? There's no question. We don't even need to write a backup, but let's throw in some random ones just because you never know what happens. It makes me very, very nervous when people wait till the very last minute, and they love to do that. I don't know why people want to ID on day 45. I've had a couple clients where we waited to ID on day 45 because they just, I don't know, resisted pulling the trigger, didn't want to do anything.
Yeah, it's amazing how often that happens.
Yeah. And then you're stuck buying one of those three, and we might not even have an offer out on it yet. And that is terrifying to me as the broker, that we're going to ID something. We don't have an offer. We don't know where they're thinking, if they're going to come together, if they're real sellers. But we'll do our best. We'll try to make it happen. And I've played that game. It works. We've been successful, but it causes a lot of additional heartburn for no real reason.
Right. Yeah. So I'm so glad to hear you share this, because this is the problem. It's the nationwide problem. And the fact that people just don't understand the exchange well enough. So for you, the same thing for me is I tell people, as soon as you decide that you want to sell the property you've held onto, the property you're going to relinquish, also known as a down leg, soon as you know that you want to sell it, long before you talk to a listing agent, first call you should make is your CPA. Get clear on what your tax implication is going to be. And if the CPA says you might want to consider an exchange, then, search out a broker that knows 1031 exchanges. That may be tough. If you're in the Pacific Northwest, you can search out Rae. But the issue is that they need to plan out the exchange. It needs to be planned and mapped before they put that other property on the market. So like you, when they're in the 45-day and they haven't identified a property, and I've seen it many times, they'll identify 3 properties, not do any due diligence on those 3. Now the 46th day has come, so they're locked in on those 3 properties. And I've seen it happen where they get blown out on all 3 deals and no exchange happens. I've also seen where that is close and they end up buying a property they really don't want because the alternative would be even worse. So, I've told them, I was like, well, let's buy the one of the 3 and hold it for a couple of years, and we'll get rid of it and do this again when we can really focus on what you really want to do. I don't think people realize that as well, is that a 1031 exchange is not final. Just because you did an exchange doesn't mean, oh, well, I have to hold on to this now forever. No, a couple of years and get rid of it and do another exchange. Yeah, timing is a big one.
Yeah. You lose all of your negotiation power the longer you wait. So if you're already stuck.
Yeah, if the other side knows.
And they might not be intelligent enough to ask the questions, right? Sometimes you're lucky and nobody asks, but other times they want to know and they want proof. They want proof of where your funds are, when you close, when your ID period is done before they'll even engage with you. Mm-hmm. And if you're working with a sophisticated broker that knows what they're doing, then you're going to lose that negotiation power if your time is up. And I always want as much negotiation power as we could possibly have. So,
exactly.
Because you never know what comes up in due diligence, what comes up on title. Maybe we need to ask for a concession and we've got a little bit of wiggle room. We should try to do so. And I think that's another big misconception is people think that 1031 exchange buyers are always going to overpay. I hear that time and time again. It's not the case. Not if you plan, not if you have options and you know what you're doing. You don't have to overpay because you're in an exchange.
That's right. Yeah. My favorite exchanges is when I close within the 45-day period. with my clients.
Yeah.
Obviously, those people don't typically have debt they have to replace. It's an all cash deal. And that's my favorite, is when we've worked together, we know we're writing offers before they close. And so now we're actually, that first 7 to 10 days of the 45 days, we're doing due diligence on multiple properties. So that, when day 30, 35 rolls around, we identify and we pull the trigger on one and we do it, get it done. Because at that point, you've already done the due diligence, and most of it anyways, and you can close in 10 days. Now, I don't go across a lot of different uses for people when they're exchanging. I'm a net lease guy. I do the national absolute net lease type assets where you can do due diligence in less than 7 days, because typically everything's there. You might have to update an Alta. That's pretty common. But other than that, it's pretty smooth and slick. All right. Share a compelling 1031 story.
So let's see. I have a headache of one that was successful. So we had an exchange client moving here from Montana. They were selling their 4-unit retail office-y mixed use investment. Moving here, wanted to relocate their investment here. We started looking, pretty smooth sailing on their down leg, identified a property that we thought was going to be great. But as it turned out, as we got into the due diligence period, has 5 retail condos, which were all leased, and was fantastic for my buyer because he's in his mid-70s. He wanted something very clean that he didn't have to deal with. So when you're buying retail condos, you're not worrying about any of the CapEx. It's all included into the HOA. The HOA was healthy, had good reserves. But it turned out there's actually 2 HOAs, which meant 3 insurance policies. 2 of the condos were in one with a multifamily up above, nonprofit that was also for sale. They had their own HOA. Then the other 3 condos were in another HOA. So you had the insurance for all, the insurance for each one, lease renewals that had not actually been put pen to paper, rent escalations that were not actually in effect. So just a lot of cleanup. Still a great option. Was really glad that we got started on that one soon enough so that we had the time to walk through each of those steps and try to figure out the unraveling, and also push back on the seller to do a lot of the cleanup that they needed to do for us to move forward. And in the interim, we started looking for other options, and how are we going to pivot? We ended up IDing 2 other options, but we closed, I think that one closed 5 days after our ID period. So just getting ahead of it was great. And if we hadn't had that time, I think it would have been a much more stressful situation and could have been a very ugly outcome.
Yeah. Great story. From doing an exchange, and coming across an exchange client, first, let me just ask this question, yes or no question. Have you ever engaged with a client who they've already closed, they've got their QI, and you're connected with them after the closing, like they're already in their ID period?
Yes.
And what's the longest one that how far along is that you've gotten into one?
I think just a handful of days.
Okay.
Like they're like, because what happens is they're connected through their exchange accommodator, right? Which is hilarious to me. They've sold they're down there, they've got the funds. They go, well, what do I do now? And
yeah, isn't that crazy? It's amazing how often I hear about that.
So I have one exchange accommodators who then say, reach out to Rae. She's going to set you up. And then I always tell my exchange clients, like, all right, I am available 24/7. This is number one thing. We're going to check the market every single day. I'm making calls. I'm calling brokers. I'm telling them I have somebody in their ID period. I want to get as much options in front of you as we possibly can ASAP and see what we can make happen, right? And then you think it's very, very crucial to continue to check the market and continue to have those conversations with brokers to see what else is out there, even if you think you have the one lined up, because there might be a better option or something might happen at the last minute with that one. Just because we've ID'd one doesn't mean that that has to be the one that we buy.
Yeah, well, and that's another thing too, is people will find one they really like and they lock in on it, and they're not looking at other options while they're locked in on that one. And if that one does go sideways for whatever reason, once again, you're between a rock and a hard place. So my two most compelling, number one is, and this just happened a couple of years ago, I got referred to a guy that was closing on his down leg in less than a week. I think it was 5 days that he was closing, and he had not engaged the QI yet. He had just found out from his CPA that his capital gains tax was going to be north of $400,000, and he lost his mind. And the CPA said, well, hold on. I got a guy that you can talk to. You need to call James Bean. He's an exchange expert, commercial broker. Call him. And we were able to get him done. And we did close inside his 45 days too. And I just told him, I said, look, if you don't, for whatever reason, 2-3 years into this, you want to get rid of it, you will be able to do it. So, when I get into the net lease world, I'm very particular. I want to make sure that we're looking at brand new properties that's got 15, 20 years of term so that they have options to spin out of it if they want.
Sure. Without losing too much. You don't want to get stuck with 1 or 2 years left on your lease and
showing notes to people. But the other one was I had somebody where I think it was 13 days before their ID period was up.
Okay. Where
somebody was referred to me. They had already 30 plus days into their ID period, and I was able to get them done. So, and not everybody can do that. I've been doing this now going on 10 years, really focusing on representing exchange buyers. And, I've built a pretty well-oiled machine in order to do that. And you have to. Anything else that you want to add, touch on?
I mean, for me, that's the joy too, right? There's kind of a rush to be in the commercial real estate with that sort of urgency. It's fun. It's a challenge. And so I'm always up for it.
I do kind of like the certainty of execution that they're pretty much stuck and they have to do a deal, right?
Yeah.
So,
but I want to feel good about it too, right? You want people to like what they're buying always. And so I think the best way to do that is time, and then just start sorting through as many options as you can and quickly eliminating what works or doesn't work and try to pinpoint what they're looking for.
Very good. See, everybody that's listening, Rae's a broker who gets it. So, Rae, thank you very much for showing up with me today and being on Best 1031 Online. Everybody, please make sure you like, subscribe, and make comments. We'll have Rae's contact information as well as how to get contact to me. And Rae, what's the closing line that everybody says?
Because the best 1031 is a successful 1031.
That's right. Thanks again for being here, and thank all of you for watching. And we will see you next time on Best 1031 Online. Remember, invest wisely.
Yes, and on time. Thanks, James.
You're welcome.